Cyrus Hall McCormick was a Virginia inventor and industrialist who became one of the most influential figures in American agricultural history. Born on February 15, 1809, in Rockbridge County, Virginia, McCormick came from a family of Scottish-Irish descent with a strong tradition of mechanical innovation. His father, Robert McCormick, was a farmer and inventor who spent years attempting to develop a mechanical reaper to harvest grain. The McCormick farm, known as Walnut Grove, would become the birthplace of an invention that would revolutionize agriculture and help feed a growing nation. Cyrus grew up in the Shenandoah Valley, a region of fertile farmland where agriculture was the foundation of economic life. His early years were marked by hard work on the family farm and an education that was practical rather than formal. He attended a small rural school but received much of his real education working alongside his father in the farm workshop. The elder McCormick had been working for decades on various mechanical devices, including attempts to create a machine that could harvest grain more efficiently than workers with hand scythes and cradles. Young Cyrus watched these experiments with keen interest, absorbing lessons about mechanics, persistence, and the practical needs of farmers. In the early 19th century, harvesting grain was back-breaking labor performed entirely by hand. Workers would cut the standing grain with scythes or cradles, then gather and bind it into sheaves. The work was exhausting and time-consuming. A skilled laborer could harvest perhaps 2 acres per day. This limitation meant that farmers could only plant as much grain as they could harvest during the brief window when the crop was ripe. If a farmer planted more than his workers could cut in time, the grain would spoil in the fields. This bottleneck in the harvest process limited agricultural productivity and kept food production relatively low. Robert McCormick had recognized this problem and spent years trying to develop a mechanical solution. He built several experimental reapers, but none worked satisfactorily. The challenge was enormous. A successful reaper needed to cut the grain stalks cleanly, gather them efficiently, and operate reliably in varying field conditions. It had to be simple enough for farmers to operate and maintain, yet robust enough to withstand the rigors of field work. Robert's design showed promise but always failed at some crucial point. By 1831, he had essentially given up on the project, defeated by the technical challenges. It was at this point that Cyrus McCormick took over where his father had left off. In the summer of 1831, the 22-year-old Cyrus began working intensively on his own reaper design. He incorporated some of his father's ideas but added crucial innovations of his own. His design featured a straight reciprocating knife blade that moved back and forth like scissors, cutting the grain stalks. A rotating reel pushed the standing grain against the blade. Dividers separated the grain to be cut from the rest of the field. A platform caught the cut grain, which could then be raked off by a worker riding on the machine. The entire apparatus was pulled by horses. In July 1831, McCormick tested his reaper in a field of oats on the family farm. The machine worked. It cut grain mechanically, doing the work of several men with hand tools. The demonstration attracted attention from neighboring farmers, though many remained skeptical. The machine was crude and required refinement, but the basic concept was proven. McCormick had succeeded where his father and countless other inventors had failed. He had created a practical mechanical reaper. However, McCormick did not immediately capitalize on his invention. For several years, he focused on other business ventures. The McCormick family was involved in iron manufacturing, operating a small foundry. Cyrus became absorbed in this business, attempting to make it profitable. The reaper sat largely unused while he pursued other interests. This delay would later prove costly, as other inventors were also working on similar machines. In 1834, McCormick obtained a patent for his reaper, securing legal protection for his invention. Yet he still did not actively manufacture or market the machine. He made improvements to the design over the next several years, but production remained minimal. A few machines were built and sold to local farmers, but there was no systematic effort to commercialize the invention. McCormick seemed uncertain about the reaper's commercial potential or perhaps was simply distracted by other concerns. The turning point came in 1839 when McCormick learned that other inventors, particularly Obed Hussey, had developed competing reapers and were beginning to market them. Hussey had actually patented his reaper design in 1833, before McCormick, though the two machines worked on different principles. The emergence of competition galvanized McCormick into action. He realized that if he did not move quickly to establish his reaper in the market, others would capture the opportunity he had created. McCormick began manufacturing reapers in earnest at Walnut Grove. He also started demonstrating the machine at county fairs and agricultural exhibitions, where farmers could see it operate. These demonstrations were crucial for overcoming skepticism. Farmers were conservative by nature and reluctant to invest in new technology. Seeing the reaper actually cut grain in field conditions was far more convincing than any written description or testimonial. McCormick proved to be a gifted showman, understanding how to present his invention to maximum effect. Sales gradually increased through the early 1840s. McCormick sold 7 reapers in 1842, 29 in 1843, and 50 in 1844. The numbers were growing, but production at Walnut Grove was limited. The small farm workshop could not produce machines in large quantities. Moreover, Virginia was not ideally located for serving the expanding agricultural regions of the Midwest. The great wheat-growing areas were in states like Illinois, Wisconsin, and Iowa. Farmers in these regions needed reapers, but transporting heavy machines from Virginia was expensive and impractical. McCormick recognized that to truly succeed, he needed to manufacture his reapers closer to his customers. In 1847, he made the bold decision to move his operations to Chicago, Illinois. Chicago was then a rapidly growing city on the shores of Lake Michigan, positioned at the edge of the vast prairie farmlands. It had excellent transportation connections via the Great Lakes and was becoming a hub for agricultural commerce. It was the perfect location for manufacturing farm equipment. The move to Chicago was a calculated risk. McCormick was leaving his family home and the security of familiar surroundings to establish himself in a rough frontier city. He was 40 years old, relatively late in life to be starting over. But he understood that Chicago offered opportunities that Virginia could not. He formed a partnership with Charles M. Gray and William B. Ogden, prominent Chicago businessmen who provided capital and local expertise. Together they established a factory on the north bank of the Chicago River. The Chicago factory began production in 1848. The timing was fortuitous. The late 1840s and 1850s saw massive expansion of agriculture in the Midwest. Railroads were pushing westward, opening new lands for settlement. Immigrants were pouring into the region, establishing farms on the prairie. The demand for agricultural machinery was exploding. McCormick's reaper arrived at exactly the right moment to meet this demand. McCormick proved to be not just an inventor but also a brilliant businessman and marketer. He pioneered sales techniques that were revolutionary for their time. He offered farmers the option to purchase reapers on credit, paying in installments after the harvest when they had cash from selling their crops. This was a radical idea in an era when most transactions were cash only. It made the reaper accessible to farmers who could not afford the substantial upfront cost. McCormick also offered guarantees and warranties, promising that the machine would perform as advertised or he would refund the purchase price. This reduced the risk for farmers and built confidence in the product. He established a network of sales agents throughout the Midwest, men who demonstrated the reaper, took orders, and provided service. He advertised extensively in agricultural newspapers and journals. He published testimonials from satisfied customers. He continued to exhibit at fairs and competitions, where his reaper consistently won prizes and recognition. Every aspect of his business was designed to build awareness, create confidence, and drive sales. The results were spectacular. McCormick sold 800 reapers in 1849. By 1851, production had reached 1,000 machines per year. The factory expanded repeatedly to keep pace with demand. McCormick's reaper was transforming agriculture across the Midwest. Farmers who had been limited to small grain acreages could now plant and harvest much larger fields. The reaper could cut 10 to 12 acres per day, 5 to 6 times what a man with a cradle could accomplish. This multiplication of productivity meant farmers could cultivate more land, produce more grain, and earn more income. The impact extended far beyond individual farms. the mechanical reaper helped make American agriculture the most productive in the world. It enabled the United States to become a major exporter of grain, feeding not just its own growing population but also markets in Europe. The reaper was particularly crucial during the Civil War when millions of men left farms to serve in the armies. The machines allowed remaining farmers and farm workers, including women and older men, to maintain agricultural production despite the labor shortage. Some historians have argued that the mechanical reaper was as important to Union victory as any weapon, because it ensured that Northern armies and civilians remained well-fed throughout the war. McCormick's success inevitably attracted competitors and imitators. Numerous manufacturers entered the farm equipment business, producing their own reapers based on various designs. Some copied McCormick's machine directly, leading to patent disputes and litigation. McCormick spent considerable time and money defending his patents in court. He won some cases and lost others. The legal battles were frustrating and expensive, but they also kept his name prominent and established him as the leading figure in the industry. His most significant competitor was Obed Hussey, whose reaper design predated McCormick's patent. The rivalry between McCormick and Hussey was intense and sometimes bitter. They competed at agricultural fairs, each trying to prove their machine superior. They fought in court over patent rights. They published advertisements and pamphlets attacking each other's designs. The competition drove both men to improve their machines and ultimately benefited farmers who had better equipment as a result. In 1851, McCormick took his reaper to the Great Exhibition in London, the first World's Fair. The exhibition was a showcase for industrial and technological achievements from around the world. McCormick's reaper was demonstrated before European audiences, including British farmers and agricultural experts. Initial reactions were skeptical. British observers thought the American machine looked crude compared to European equipment. However, when the reaper was tested in actual field conditions, it performed brilliantly, cutting grain faster and more efficiently than any British machine. The demonstration earned McCormick international recognition and established American agricultural technology as world-class. The London triumph led to awards and honors. McCormick received medals from the French government and was elected to the French Academy of Sciences. These European accolades enhanced his reputation back home and helped establish his reaper as the standard against which others were judged. McCormick understood the value of such recognition and used it effectively in his marketing. By the late 1850s, McCormick was one of the wealthiest men in Chicago. His factory was producing thousands of reapers annually. He had established a dominant position in the farm equipment industry. But success brought new challenges. Managing a large manufacturing operation required different skills than inventing a machine or even launching a business. McCormick had to deal with labor relations, supply chains, quality control, and financial management. He proved capable in these areas as well, though not without difficulties. The factory was destroyed by fire in 1871 during the Great Chicago Fire that devastated much of the city. McCormick was 62 years old and might have been expected to retire. Instead, he immediately began rebuilding. Within months, a new and larger factory was under construction. The rebuilt facility incorporated the latest manufacturing technology and was more efficient than the original. McCormick's determination to rebuild after the fire demonstrated his resilience and commitment to his business. McCormick's personal life was as carefully managed as his business. In 1858, at age 49, he married Nancy Annette Fowler, a woman 26 years his junior. Nettie came from a prosperous family and was well educated and cultured. The marriage was happy and produced 7 children. Nettie proved to be an invaluable partner, managing the household and supporting Cyrus in his business and public activities. She shared his strong Presbyterian faith and his commitment to philanthropy. Religion was central to McCormick's life. He was a devout Presbyterian who believed his business success was a blessing from God that carried obligations. He gave generously to religious causes, particularly to the Presbyterian Church and to theological education. He was a major benefactor of the Presbyterian Theological Seminary of the Northwest in Chicago, which was later renamed McCormick Theological Seminary in his honor. He saw no contradiction between making money and serving God, believing that business success enabled Christian service. McCormick was also involved in politics, though less directly than some of his contemporaries. He was a Democrat with Southern sympathies, which was unusual for a Chicago businessman. During the Civil War, he supported the Union but opposed many of Lincoln's policies, particularly the Emancipation Proclamation. His political views sometimes put him at odds with the predominantly Republican business community in Chicago. After the war, he remained active in Democratic politics and was mentioned as a possible candidate for various offices, though he never sought elected position. In his later years, McCormick gradually stepped back from day-to-day management of the company, though he remained involved in major decisions. His son, Cyrus Hall McCormick Jr., began taking over operational responsibilities. The younger McCormick would eventually lead the company into the 20th century and oversee its merger with other manufacturers to form International Harvester in 1902. The elder McCormick continued to receive honors and recognition. He was celebrated as one of America's great inventors and industrialists. His reaper was recognized as one of the most important inventions of the century. He had demonstrated that American ingenuity could produce innovations that changed the world. He had also shown that an inventor could be a successful businessman, building a great company based on his own invention. On May 13, 1884, Cyrus McCormick died at his home in Chicago. He was 75 years old. His death was mourned not just in Chicago but across the nation and internationally. Newspapers published lengthy obituaries celebrating his achievements. He was remembered as the man who had revolutionized agriculture and helped feed the world. His funeral was attended by thousands, including business leaders, politicians, and ordinary farmers whose lives had been changed by his invention. McCormick was buried in Graceland Cemetery in Chicago. His grave is marked by a substantial monument befitting his status as one of the city's most prominent citizens. In death as in life, he was honored as a man who had made a lasting contribution to human progress. The legacy of Cyrus McCormick extends far beyond his personal achievements. The reaper he invented was the foundation of modern mechanized agriculture. It began a process of technological innovation that continues today. Modern combines that harvest grain are direct descendants of McCormick's original reaper, incorporating the same basic principles he pioneered. The company he founded, through various mergers and transformations, remained a major force in agricultural equipment manufacturing for more than a century. McCormick's business innovations were as important as his technical invention. His use of credit sales, warranties, advertising, and dealer networks established practices that became standard across American industry. He showed how technology could be successfully commercialized and brought to market. He demonstrated that inventors could be entrepreneurs, building great enterprises based on their innovations. The impact of the mechanical reaper on American development was profound. It enabled the settlement and cultivation of the vast prairie lands of the Midwest. It made American agriculture the most productive in the world. It freed labor from farm work, allowing industrial development. It ensured food security for a rapidly growing population. It made the United States a major agricultural exporter. These consequences flowed from McCormick's invention and his success in bringing it to farmers. Modern historians recognize McCormick as one of the key figures of the Industrial Revolution in America. He stands alongside inventors like Samuel Morse, Thomas Edison, and Alexander Graham Bell as men whose innovations transformed society. His reaper is recognized as one of the most important inventions of the 19th century, ranking with the steam engine, the telegraph, and the railroad in its impact on human life. Yet McCormick was also a product of his time, with limitations and blind spots. His political conservatism and Southern sympathies put him on the wrong side of history regarding slavery and civil rights. His business practices, while innovative, were also ruthlessly competitive. He crushed competitors when he could and fought bitterly in court to protect his interests. He was a demanding employer who expected total dedication from his workers. He was not a simple hero but a complex figure whose achievements must be understood in context. In the end, Cyrus McCormick was a man who saw a problem, invented a solution, and had the vision and determination to bring that solution to the world. He combined technical skill with business acumen and marketing genius. He understood farmers' needs and created a product that met those needs. He built an organization that could manufacture and distribute his invention on a massive scale. He persevered through setbacks and competition to establish lasting success. McCormick's story is fundamentally American. It is a story of innovation, entrepreneurship, and the transformation of an agricultural nation into an industrial power. It demonstrates how individual ingenuity, combined with business skill and favorable circumstances, can change the world. The mechanical reaper that Cyrus McCormick invented in a Virginia farm workshop in 1831 helped feed millions of people and shaped the development of a nation. That is a legacy that few can match.